Dear students, today I am going to discuss on the topic conflict between tradition and unconventionality in R.K. Narayan's novel, The Guide. Well, we have done with the novelist and the novel threadbare in our regular classroom lectures. We have also explored the major critical areas related thereto. Nevertheless, I felt it pertinent to discuss exclusively on this topic, which, to my mind, is an important aspect of the novel. Now, the topic speaks of two things. Number one, tradition, and number two, unconventionality. First of all, let us try to understand what these two terms mean. Tradition is the name given to practices, beliefs, and habits that have, with the passage of time, acquired prestige and halo. It's an abiding national habit which is difficult to discard or even to discredit. Dr. Radhakrishnan has said, centuries of life make a little history, and centuries of history make a little tradition. Unconventionality, on the other hand, is viewed as a spirit of dissent and disagreement with the established code of conduct. It involves outlook that is highly objective, analytical, rational, and critical towards the existing order of things. Students, to be more precise, tradition involves unquestioned acceptance, whereas unconventionality defines or disagreement. Now, judging by the yardsticks of tradition and unconventionality, where does this novel stand? Let us begin with examining some selective characters, events, and setting of the novel. I will not repeat the story of the novel, which by now I am sure you are fully conversant with. However, as a very brief recap, the novel tells the story of Raju, a lovable rogue who rises from humble origins to become a successful tourist guide, makes and loses a fortune through his association with Rosie and her husband Marco, and finally ends up as a fake sadhu who, however, redeems himself through self-sacrifice. When we speak of the characters, some of the characters of the novel are thoroughly steeped in tradition. They are Raju's mother, his maternal uncle, Velen, and the villagers. Raju's mother is a touch me not kind of woman. Taken aback by the name of Rosie, which sounds strange to her, her orthodox mind tells her that Rosie is one of the breed of snake woman. She advises Rosie to fall on the feet of her husband. She further moralizes her, quote, "You know, living with a husband is no joke. No husband worth the name was ever conquered by powder and lipstick alone." Unquote. Her outlook on husband wife relationship is thoroughly conventional. Now, Raju's maternal uncle, he is an unmannered villager, picks up quarrel with Raju, uses rude and rough language full of abusive words. Again, he is a character who is steeped deeply in tradition. Speaking of Velen, he represents the gullibility, absurdity, and naivety of the primitive man. He is a credulous fool. He is also a symbol of power, of superstition, dogma, and ignorance. But then, there is also another set of characters who are torn between tradition and unconventionality. They are Raju, Marco, and Rosie. First of all, let us examine Raju. He leaves behind his older and traditional ways of life, little by little, develops within quotes new lines, unquote, in his railway shop, falls apart with the orthodox ideas of his aged mother, indulges in worldly pursuits of fame, sex, and money, commits innumerable sins against tradition, namely, breaks Marco's trust, commits adultery with Rosie, abuses her youthful passion and her art for his own selfish motives, commits forgery, contaminates the sanctity of wedlock, feigns saintliness, exploits the faith of villagers to earn for himself an easy bread. He is, I would rather say, is more sinning than sinned against. He is true and sincere to none. However, finally, he retires to the traditional role of a recluse by persistently disciplining his heart and mind. Marco. He marries Rosie for highly unconventional reasons. Rosie, being the daughter of a Devdasi, an extraordinary scholar like Marco alone can choose her to be a life partner. However, finally, he also seeks fulfillment in the glory of ancient Indian art and culture. As far as Rosie is concerned, she is wholly dedicated herself to dancing, highly educated, MA in economics, fails to understand her husband's devotion to his profession as a scholar. Through her, Narayan sets an example of a liberated woman in the post independence Indian society. She is reminiscent of Candida of Bernard Shaw. But she is also deeply rooted in tradition. She loves classical dances of India. Even though deserted by Marco, she still regards him as her husband. Despite her physical relationship with Raju, she never places Raju in the place of Marco. A fatalist at core, she believes in karma. Now, a word for the setting of the novel. The guide, like Raja Rao's Kanthapura, is essentially a novel of India, giving a graphic portrayal of Malgudi and its suburbs. Its characteristics are: number one, it has traditional limitations of the local folk, viz. Fatalism, caste prejudices, ignorance, superstition, and abject surrender to God and religion. Glaring contrast of grinding poverty and wasteful luxury in the Indian life is also found here. New Extension is a locality of the people overflowing with money, fame, and influence. The stylish house in which Raju and Rosie live at the zenith of their career is a sharp contrast to the poor housing conditions in the rest of Malgudi and its nearby villages. Last but not the least, people in the modernized part are disturbed mentally and spiritually. The people in the village Mangal lead a serene and peaceful life. Thus, we find that although Malgudi is in the process of continuous modernization, but it is not at the cost of total extinction of the traditional structures. Having spoken this much and having deliberated thus, we may safely and simplistically conclude that the guide is a shining example of the clash between tradition and unconventionality, and also of Narayan's view that tradition must prevail in Malgudi despite all surprises and setbacks caused by the influx of unconventional forces from outside. But all said and done, there is something more that meets the eye. Narayan is neither a reformer like Mulk Raj Anand nor a philosopher like Raja Rao. He is not committed to any ideology. His attitude, therefore, is guided by purely artistic considerations. He neither idealizes India and her tradition, nor does he condemn them. He accepts the people as they are and the kind of life they lead. His fiction is truly an artistic revelation of a mind and its milieu, and the guide is no exception. To conclude, I would say that the guide is a spectacular example of a post colonial, post-modern, open-ended novel subject to plurality of interpretations. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe, and enjoy literature.